Sean Finter, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here with me today.
I'm delighted to be here. So thanks for having me.
That's great. So you had me when I got your napkin because your napkin is about a napkin. So it's like the 10,000 mirrors test. And and I'm going to read it out loud. And I think it's a two-parter, but guide me on this. The first half says, if your staff being underlined, can't articulate your business strategy on a napkin, you don't have one, and you don't have one is also underlined. Why did you share that with me?
Well, that napkin changed my life. So that napkin came after 12 years of school in which I learned very little about the curriculum of my school. I found out later that I was dyslexic, and I realized I didn't know how to learn. And I went to London, England, right out of working at a Hard Rock Cafe in Toronto. I got picked up by this company that was opening up a huge sports bar right at Piccadilly Circus, a magical place in London. We're going to have 4 months to prepare. Part of my job was hiring 35, 40 bartenders and setting up this dream team. And so my team, the leadership team for the bar, was myself from Hard Rock, another guy from Planet Hollywood, a woman from Rainforest Cafe, TGI Fridays member. And I like to joke that, we all came to London with two things. One, ambition to make something for ourselves, and two, stolen manuals from the business we had worked for. So our first job was to put together the super manual for this business. Well, that's what we called it. And our boss, a South African who I was terrified of. I'm 6'3". I think he was 6'5", but he showed up like he was 7'5". Had that dead look in his eyes, like he had killed someone. He was ex-special forces in the South African military. And we spent weeks piecing together, and I mean literally piecing together the super manual. And it had everything in there. And we handed it to him. He looked disgusted. He set it down on the table in front of us. He opened it up to the middle, and it said, he pointed, he said, "What's this?" And I looked at it and I said, "Oh, we took a schematic of the building, and that's like how you'd escape if there was a fire." And he looked at us and he said, "Have any of you idiots ever been in a burning building before?" And we looked at each other and we're like, "No, sir. Luckily we haven't." And he goes, "Well, let me tell you, I have. And you do not look for the super manual when there's a fire burning. You follow the person in front of you and you head for a safe exit." And so he literally threw the super manual in the bin, and he gave us a napkin. He said, "I want you to write on this napkin, and don't flip it over one side only, how your team is going to win inside this business." And that's how it began. I had to write down on one little square how we win. And it started with the most important question, what does winning mean? So that's where it came from.
That's brilliant. Okay, so there's so much there in that intro. Coming from a small town, because I know you came from a small town, finding yourself in London, Piccadilly Circus. For those of you who are listening, have never been to London, Piccadilly Circus is like Times Square. So you're coming out small town to this Times Square, larger than life environment, electric place, and there's this larger than life man standing there calling you an idiot for all
Right.
this work that like this whole thing sounds like this
Pointing out that I was an idiot, not just calling me one, pointing out how foolish I was to think I could create a 500-page manual to teach someone how to win.
Right. Like it just sounds, the whole thing sounds like it's the plot to a movie, right? I mean, it just sounds incredible.
Yeah.
So I mean, on one hand, kudos to you for R&D these manuals. On the other hand, yes, you can't follow somebody. You don't go to a manual to find your way out of a burning building. So what did you find? What did you put on that napkin? What got you the gig?
Well, we locked ourselves in a room for a couple of days, and like it occurred to us really early that, we were only like, I was the youngest guy, 19, the oldest person on the team was about 25. But there was collectively a couple of decades of experience in the business that we were working in, and we realized that nobody knew how to articulate winning. We didn't. There was a thousand different things, right? Make great drinks, smiles, this, that, all these things, food, fast. And it was like, is that how you win? And then not me, but someone came up and said, "Listen, I think you win is that if you create a relationship in that brief moment, somebody comes back again, right? If that person leaves and returns, that's the only way you've won, right? Not even the spend on the day doesn't determine whether they're going to come back or not. So that's where we started from, right? And said that for us, winning was getting somebody to come back to the business. And we said, okay, if that's it, what is it? Is it service? Is it hospitality? Then we had to really explore that word, right? So for us, we said if we could create and consistently deliver remarkable hospitality. So remarkable just means worthy of remark in the future, right? It was something special that your mind's going to recall over the other hundreds of thousands of experiences. And hospitality, what it means to me is how another person feels about themselves while they're in my company, right? So does that person truly feel seen and heard and valued and understood, respected, and maybe even at the highest level loved, right? In that moment, in that environment, am I showing them love? And I find if you do that, you're gonna get people to come back again and see you.
And you're dropping a lot of wisdom fast here, Sean. So let's roll back to the first thing you said. Someone comes back again. Is that the second part of that, the middle part of your napkin? Is that what that represents? A customer coming back again, that being the center part of that success? Okay.
That's right. The highest reward is if they come back again with people they care about, right? With family and friends, coworkers, and that sort of thing. That's how, not just bars and restaurants, that's how most businesses multiply, right?
Right.
That word of mouth
this applies
is
everywhere.
right. Right. And that's why, in that, and I really believe that in business, the real secret to business is figuring out what's most important and then measuring that. And when I owned my 8 bars and restaurants in Sydney, Australia, I did not have the benefit of having read the book, The Ultimate Question. And The Ultimate Question asks one simple question, and sometimes two, but they say after two, it dilutes the survey. But the main question is, how likely are you to recommend us on a scale of 1 to 10? And the research behind it's fascinating. But basically what the question's asking is, based on what you just experienced, our service or our product, how likely are you to put your credibility on the line for people that matter to you? And on a scale of 1 to 10, and what it tells us that if they rate you a 0 through 6, they're a detractor of your business, right? They actively warn people against getting tangled up with you. If they rate you a 7 or 8, man, if I got an 8 in school, I would have been the happiest guy in the world. But a 7 or 8 means it's entirely neutral. You had a deal. In my case, I had food and drink, you had money, we exchanged, and I'm probably never going to see you again. I'm forgettable. Only 9s and 10s become promoters of your business, and they will drag people back to see you again. So that measurement piece becomes incredibly important.
Yeah, and that obviously the ultimate question is, spawn this worldwide phenomenon around NPS, Net Promoter Score, and eNPS, which is equally important. Your employee Net Promoter Score, which is equally important. And I know we're going to touch on all these things. The other thing is, I love your definition of hospitality, how another person feels about themselves in your company.
Right.
Did I get that right?
Yeah.
So, and I wonder about this word loved. There's a lot of people who shy away from using, that a customer should feel loved or that an employee should feel loved. But you're open about that. Like, loved is an appropriate term. I agree. I think that love and work and love are all the same thing. We spend 8 hours of our day plus there.
Right.
Why not feel love there?
Yeah, I think in my world, what I try to coach is that, again, what I'm trying to encourage and influence is how someone feels about themselves. And then if you feel love and you love yourself in that environment, you think at the other end of the spectrum, you despise yourself. You think you're unworthy of things that are happening. But if you get enough touch points in that visit, if you collect enough data to say, man, these people really value me. And I think they're genuinely laughing at my jokes. And he saved me this seat. And he remembered my order and all these things. And then suddenly, if you're allowed to feel that you love yourself in that environment, that's such a massive win, right? Like, as opposed to feeling I'm a commodity, I'm an inconvenience, right? I'm just another number here, right? And I think a lot of different business types can create that feeling in the business. And if you do, you're really onto something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. All right. So the bottom half of the napkin, I think, are steps to achieve this recurring customer, or this, the business, the person returning to the company, right? So this idea of a guest returning to the bar. What are those three steps? What do they represent?
Yeah. So, well, just I'll touch quickly on the top because it drives, it informs the bottom. So the top is where we're answering the most important question, right? So that particular napkin is for my front of house team, which is very different than my back of house team. And in this question that we're answering is, how do we win? How do we build this business? And when we interview people and tell them how we drive business, how do we build the company? It was described to me like a tuning fork, right? The person across from you say to them, hey, we are going to create an environment, a set of circumstances that are going to allow someone to feel confident about themselves, to feel engaged, to feel part of something. And there's one of two responses generally to that is like, what kind of hippie cult is this? Or what do you really want me to do? And the other is two words and two pieces of punctuation. Someone hears that and they lean in, they go, wow, how? How do you do that? Right? When I hear that, I know I'm talking to the right person. And then I say to them, there's 3 steps to doing this. Number one is everyone comes in with their own circumstances, right? Like even a regular is different on a different day. At a basic level, are they like a rock or a sponge that day? Right? A sponge wants to be a part of everything, understand, be chatty, and a rock's just like, I need that table and I'm putting my earbuds in, I got something to do. So we look at them at the door. As I was being coached on this when I was working back in London, my boss, Paul, used to say to me as a young guy, he'd say, hey, rate the energy of that couple that just came in the door. And I'd look at them and I go, I don't know, like 4 out of 10, I guess. And he'd go, okay, why? And then I'd watch them banter a little bit. I'd watch them loosen up a little bit. And I go, no, actually, they're 6 out of 10. And he'd say, all right, go up and greet them, which meant close the gap, get into their space in an appropriate way, mirror their energy. And my goal over the course of the visit was to take them 2 levels up. Right. So if I can mirror and move, right, I'm winning. And it's unrealistic to think that I'm going to get every guest to a 10, but if I move them in the right direction, I'm winning. And on that basic concept on mirroring somebody, you think about someone who's coming from left work early because they've got a promotion, they dragged a few of their friends to the office. But right behind them is a couple who's come from a funeral, right? No one coming from a funeral wants to be greeted with the high five, high energy person, and vice versa, right? So we meet them in their space, mirror them, and then we look to take them up a level. That's the operation side. That's what we're doing for a living, meeting them and moving them. We move to step number 2 is.
Before we move on to step number 2, I just
Yeah.
want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Somewhere out there right now, someone's listening and saying, that sounds dishonest, Sean. Me mirroring somebody else is me being dishonest about who I am. What
Right.
would you say to that person?
Well, a couple of things. First off, there's a lot of talk about, showing up as your authentic self in business. We all have bad days. I don't know about you, but if you go out with your friends, do you want to be served by the server acting out their authentic self they were broken up with earlier that day? No, thanks. When I say, how are you? I'm not really interested as your customer, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but customers are not. Or if your back's sore, or, whatever's happening in your world, right? So the world that I live in, I'm not in theater, right? And again, no one wants to go to a Broadway show and see someone that comes in on stage, haven't finished my cigarette yet. I didn't even want to be here today. My alarm went off late. Who would pay for that? Right. But I am in a world where I'm creating an environment, and I'm in a servant leadership role. And I'm in a role where I'm creating an environment for people to feel comfortable and feel seen and welcome and all of those things. So I think authenticity has its place in my business, off stage. On stage, we are there. And like I say, I told my staff, I had 396 staff when I sold my bars and restaurants. And I said, listen, everybody has a bad day. Everyone's entitled to have a bad day, just never on the floor of my restaurant. Never. No one wants to see it. I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I will
And I think
cover.
that's the powerful thing, right? People need to understand that when you show up and you're on the floor, you're on the floor. You're
Yeah,
you're there to serve. You're not
yeah.
there for your purposes. You're there to serve somebody. So I
Yeah,
love
and
your
let's
I love your
let's look at a different industry. I'm getting ready to. I'm laying on a table. I may get to meet the doctor that's doing my heart surgery, and he walks in. I go, "Hey, doc, how are you?" He goes, "Oh, I'm glad you asked. You know, my kids are at my house. My wife, this is happening. That's I'm like, oh my god, let me off the table, right? I
yeah
don't want that guy dealing with it. I want a pro to come in. How are you today? I'm great. How are you? Yeah, I'm ready to do your surgery. I'm prepared. Today's your day, right? That's all I want to hear. Keep your authentic
yeah.
self to your other doctors in the break room.
So that you can show up for your customer, for your
That's
client, right? You're authentic with your team to show up for your client.
yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's the H2H part. That's the first part. The other thing that I don't want to skip over, how important is that wow how part, right? The two words separated by punctuation. Wow, how do you do that when people would say this? How important is it in your recruiting to get the right people for that role?
I think it's more than half the battle, right? I just in the industry I'm in, we don't have a really long runway, right? We got to get people off the ground in 100 days or less to do a really difficult role. And I used to have people come in all the time and say to me, how do you do this? How do you create these people? I said, well, I don't, right? I said, we have a good induction program, but I hire people that were well parented,
Yeah,
right? People that come in that are curious, that are polite, that are instinctively look to make somebody's day, right? Those
yeah.
are the people. And that in my world was about 5% of people that applied, right? So
That's awesome.
95% of people just weren't meant to work with us. But I can get 100 applications. I could post an ad right now and I'd have 100 applications by the end of the day. I only need 5 of them, right?
Right,
So I just
right.
hired the right people there, and not even just being the right people, but at the right place and the right time in their life. Because, if I'm running a restaurant in Ottawa and I hire someone who's a 4th year student in a 4-year program, and they're halfway through their 4th year, I got a pretty good understanding that, they're really going to hit their stride in 9 or 12 months, but they're going to be gone in 6.
Yeah.
So it's just about finding the right people who are at the right place in the right time in their life.
And I think it's also really important to be able to know what you want. Like if you can't put your strategy on a napkin, you can't find the right people to align with your napkin, right? I mean, you have to know what you're looking for to find the 5 out of the 100 too.
Right.
So after we've got H2H, step 2, optimize experience.
Yeah, so all of my restaurants were for-profit businesses. I had 4 kids who became accustomed to living indoors and having 3 meals a day, so we had to make some money. But it's about more than that. I think that the reason it says that we don't look to maximize a sale is I don't like to be gouged when I go to a restaurant. If I'm looking at your wine list and looking at $80 to $100 bottles, I don't want you to recommend in front of new business associates a $300 bottle. That's just not what I'm looking for, and you should be able to pick that up. And gouging someone once almost guarantees they're never going to come back again. And our lifetime value of our guests was of our regulars was like over $8,000. So do I want to go for the extra $10 on your one visit and never see you again? No. So we taught staff how to sell with dignity, right? The sales process just means that I have the information about our product range. And again, I'm going to meet you where you're at. And our goal was to kind of move someone 20%, 30%, not in price range, but in experience. Because if it's lunchtime and I always get a BLT, there's not much of an advantage there. But if I'm in Maryland today, and if I'm in Maryland and you have a BLC, a bacon, lettuce, and crab, right? And you try that for the first time, I'm always going to remember your store. You won my trust, and I'll probably come back again. So we taught staff the strategy on how to be the steward of a great experience,
And I
right?
like the word optimize experience out of that, because what you're not trying to do, and I know this is your sales step. I know what you're talking about is sales, but what you're really talking about is doing what's right for them, not what's right for you. And And to do that, you need to be curious, right? You need to have that observation antenna up high. You need to be watching for what somebody is doing. So that H2H first part, where you're connecting with somebody, observing them, meeting them at their energy, that's the first part that's super important, because you can't do what's right for them unless you've
That's
aligned with them, right?
Yeah, and maybe an example outside of a financial transaction on a pure experience side. So you got to be careful about getting too good at any one piece of your business, because we became a place where everyone wanted to celebrate in Sydney. This one, my original store, bar and restaurant. And then that became annoying for the regulars. Like if everyone's in there, so there's birthdays, there's this and that. But I'll tell you how it happened. For birthdays, for example, our regulars said, I cannot hear happy birthday again. I'm going to jump out a window. If I hear one more person, I won't come in here. People keep singing happy birthday. So what we would do is on the intake, when someone said they're having their birthday with us, we'd say, what's your favorite? What's her favorite song? What's a song that just gets, that would be the birthday song. I said, you're welcome to sing anything you want in the Uber after here, but that's going to be the song that you guys sing. And I don't care if it doesn't fit our music format. And our other people will tell our guests what's going on. Someone's birthday and that's a song. Often people go, oh my God, I love that song. Then we again optimize. Don't run every playbook on every table. But for example, we had these 5 different birthday cards, and it just had the fleur-de-lis, which was our logo on the front. And inside, I'll give you 2 examples. One of them, we'd get the person whose birthday was up, and we'd have something for them, like a shot or a delicious caviar in the kitchen or something like that. Get them away from the table. And then our staff would take over. Often with the leader on duty would be part of this as well. And they go up to the table and they'd say, listen, we've got this card here. I need everyone to think of a word that exemplifies this woman. You know, what is it? When her name comes to mind, what do you think? And they all write. We had all these different colored pens and had this beautiful message to say, you know, your friends, we want you to think about this. Another card said someday I'll on the front, but this was the commitment. So what have you been putting off with this woman for years? People wrote, here's my promise. We're going to have coffees on Thursdays. We're finally going to go deep sea fishing. It was like a checklist, and we put little check boxes beside it, put it in the card, right? So this is what I mean by optimized, low cost, high impact, thoughtful. The restaurant, I bought that restaurant 20 years ago. I sold it a while ago. I go back to Sydney every year now. Customers still come. People still bring me these cards and said, I ticked off all but one. This person passed away, or, you know, whatever, or
Wow.
they have these cards up on their mantle still, because people, their 8 best friends said 8 incredible things about them that they had never heard before, right? That's how we optimize an experience.
And what that cost you?
Nothing, you know, $2.
$2, right? Like, and I think that one of the things that people don't get is optimizing an experience in its best form is almost always low cost. It's
Right.
always personal. It's 100% on the personal scale, and usually like 2 to 5% on the cost scale.
Right.
And it just requires you to actually pull yourself out of your own lens and connect with a human person, right?
Exactly. And to your earlier point, you know, about the word love in the workplace or whatever, think about that woman now on her 60th birthday. Does she feel loved? Of course she does. It's not us loving her. It's us creating the environment for her to feel love, right?
Yeah.
For us to pull the threads out and to get people who would have never have said, you know, sometimes where we think it's appropriate and we take our shot, we would say, your server or the leader on duty would come over that table and would stand behind her and say, hey, before we're about to have the main course here, I'd love to go around the table. One quick story that you loved about Mary. And we'd get one. So we said, hey, David, the shy guy, David told us earlier this time that this happened, whatever. And then we'd leave. We'd go, this had happened without us, right? Or
Yeah.
one thing you love about Mary. And they go around the table real quick. We get back to the table and start dropping food. People are crying at the table, right? Not something we said, it's what they said to each other, but we created the environment for them to feel that love.
And facilitate it, right? Like, and let me ask you a question. Do you think that only hospitality businesses can do that? Or is this something that can exist in other businesses?
Yeah, different ways in different businesses, but you know, when you can tap into that emotion, when you can, you know, and I should say, this isn't a trick for us, right? Like I do this, my kids do this in my head. This isn't a trick. This is something we love to do. Who doesn't love to see a 60-year-old woman be showered in love and cry and express her gratitude. Like, I could be doing that, or I could just be pulling her dirty plates away and being ignored, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a trick. It's what we love to do. And that's why I was saying that tuning fork, you have to find people, because for the wrong person, that'd be the worst job on the planet for the
Right.
introvert who doesn't like to hear a compliment, let alone be the person facilitating with 60-year-old strangers, right? It'd be the worst job ever to some, but to our 2 to 5%, it's the best job they've ever had.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. So HUH, optimize experience. I love the word optimize in that. Optimize experience. And number three, provide reason for return. Now,
Yeah.
you'd think one and two handle number three automatically, but
You think so, but we didn't want to leave it to chance, and we thought we could do better. So, my philosophy is that if someone's in your care for 60 to 120 minutes, that's a lot of clues. They're dropping a lot of data in that time. And if you are in tune with that and you are paying attention to what they're looking at, how they're reacting to things, the way that they answer questions, my request of my staff was simple. Before they leave, and ideally the perfect scenario, which isn't even close to always possible, but the perfect scenario is as they get up from their chair and they're walking out the door, here's that last corridor, right? Walk with them, show them chivalry, show them gratitude, but if you can, find a reason to return. So somebody who was the amateur wine geek asking about the wine list and this and that, and again, we're trying to make them the hero in this. And we'd say to them on the way out, hey, here's this card. This is the GM's card. We do our new wine list next Friday, but we have a private thing for regulars and VIPs on Wednesday night. We'd love for you to join us, right? Automatically, they're set. Some love food. Something else was happening. We're changing the menu over. We'd love your feedback on that. We have live music on Thursdays and Sundays. Did you know that? It's awesome. You mentioned, I saw you watching the baseball game. Do you know that on Wednesday nights we have sound in the back room on base? A really cool crowd. They're all locals and everything else. We find something to connect you to. And behind each of these is a system, right? That starts with the senior management, middle management, the leaders that run the floor, but we're all connected. So at the host stand, there's mapping to this, right? There is a reason to return to our business. Even people that are from out of town. We had a sheet at the front door that had our view of Sydney, right? Our take. It was called Off the Beaten Trail. So everyone contributed one cool thing that's not in the guides, it's not online. And so it goes in there. So now I'm with someone who's a tourist there, and they would come. I'd go to the host stand, I'd grab this sheet, I'd grab 2 different marker pens. I say, hey, I'm going to circle in red the 2 things you got to check out based on what you've told me today. And this one here in black, I think your friend would really like that as well. They fold it up. We'd almost always see those people again. They come in to tell us that they went there. They come in for more recommendations. They just liked hanging with us, right? Easy. Give them a reason to return, and they often will.
you know, when you're talking about this stuff, first of all, I love the way you light up about this stuff, Sean. Like, I mean, this is right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
It really fuels your passion. But I want to ask you the question the other way around. How expensive is a one-time customer in your business? Like a customer that walks in and never walks in again I mean, a lot of people are like trying to get that one-time customer, but I think the way you look at it is a one-time customer is really expensive.
Yeah. Well, so let me say this. I got very lucky early on to work for people that built incredible businesses. In the case of Hard Rock, they became billionaires with a B, which is, you can count on both hands how many people have done that. In that case, with one of the founders, we watched a video, in the office about him talking one day about business, and he said something that really changed my perspective of how to build business. He said, we have these playbooks that we generate, right? You don't treat the fastest way to bankruptcy in the hospitality industry is applying the golden rule. Treat people like you want to be treated. I got a 20-year-old my daughter working tonight. If I went in with my girlfriend and my friends and she treated me like she wants to be treated, I'd walk out of the place, right? I want to be treated like a 20-year-old woman. I want to be treated like a 51-year-old guy with my friends. So you got to apply the platinum rule. Treat me like I want to be treated, right? Read me, find me, take me out. And what this guy said, Isaac Taggart, he said that if we live true to our values, we operate our playbooks, and you be yourself, right? That was a key part of this. He wasn't want to create robots. He said 20% of people will absolutely love what we're doing and become raving fans. 60% are going to dig it, really appreciate it, probably come back again. 20% are going to hate it. You know, get up on the bar to dance, the YMCA, we do this and that. People are going to hate that. And he goes, I love those friggin' numbers. Right. So I realized not everyone's for us. And I'm trying to build tribes within my business. And I realized that for some people, even the high level emotion of a card at a table, of the hundreds and hundreds of times we did it, we had a couple of people that wrote to me or pulled me aside and said, hey, that's not us. That's not our family. I totally get that. I comped their meal. I said, I'm sorry. I gave them 3 places they'd probably like to have their next birthday at. And I meant it. I was sorry that it wasn't for them. But for the other people that said, you know, called me crying the next day, said it was the best birthday they ever had, I wasn't going to water down my offer. I was going to change the way I do business. So I think it's really important to decide on your brand. In my case, my brand of hospitality, and then to live it and be willing to, like, people talk about, oh, I got a bad review on Yelp. And I said, did you deserve it? And what do you mean? Your brand isn't for everybody, right? I'm a Harley rider, right? Most of my buddies that drive BMWs, they hate Harleys. They have reason to. It's like being dragged behind a transport truck in a sandbox, right? Big, heavy machines, but that's what I love about it, right? If they rode a Harley for a day, they give them a bad review, Harley wouldn't care. The things they're complaining about are their selling features. Right. So that's where we have to make the distinction. But building a business, identify your tribe, and then work to get them back again. That's how I turned 8 bankrupt bars and restaurants into successful bars and restaurants before I sold my group.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think what my question was more was, if you're not consistent about that value proposition, and you walk, and one of the people that ought to be in your top 20% raving fans,
yeah,
and because you don't connect with them, because you don't optimize their experience by moving them up those 2 steps, right? If they come in at a 6, leave them at an 8. And that's that whole piece. Like, nobody remembers what you say to them, but they remember how you make them feel. So if you don't make them feel a little bit better than when they came in, and if you don't invite them, and I think that's the biggest thing, the reason to return is an invitation to return. It's a deliberate invitation. It's a personal invitation for them to return back. And if you don't do those things, and somebody comes in and they should have been in your 20% and they walk out, that's expensive. That's $8,000 that walked out your door.
It is. And it's, you know, the thing that I love about this, when you get the right members on your team, this is a shared goal, right? Like, these people coming back might not come back on Friday night. They might come back on Tuesday night, right? We might build this company to a position where every night you work is like a Friday, Saturday night. And that's what I did. I packed weekdays and weeknights, because we said every guest that walks through the door, those 3 things that I outlined, every guest, every time, right? And things change when we're flat out busy, but there's a playbook for that. But we're still always making that human to human connection.
That's right. Now, so talk about every guest, every time, and I don't want this. Things get busy, things get hot. Sometimes somebody gets stuck on something and can't move off. How do you support that person in that situation from a leadership point of view?
Well, the expansion to this page, it's funny, you know, for a guy, I haven't graduated high school. I just didn't know how to learn, and dyslexia didn't make it any easier. But when I learned how to teach and lead people with simple game plans, this turned into an expanded, like a dinner napkin. And so that the piece that you have is still in the middle, and I could send you the extended piece. And on there, the whole thing became this course that I wrote called Napkinomics, which ironically, I partnered with the largest spirits company in the world. And that course was a book that I wrote, never published. I just got the rights back, but never published to paper, but it became the largest educational program, or one of the largest in my industry. I went to 55 countries, and over 500,000 people learned this course about how to do this. So one of the other panels on there was about relationship recovery. Originally it was service recovery, but I'm like, we're not trying to recover service. We're trying to recover the relationship. Like, we let somebody down. So an example is a person came in and told us that, hey, I'm going to see the show and it starts 8 o'clock. And if I order now, can I get my food? Can you basically guarantee me that I'll be able to do this? And we said, yes. And it turns out that we couldn't. The kitchen got backed up, and now that person isn't just pissed off because they're not getting to eat their dinner the way they'd like, but we've compromised the whole night, right? So in that model where I'm saying to the staff, like, you're the tip of the spear, right? You get the tips as a server or bartender. You also have to fall on the sword for us, right? And when you apologize, you didn't back the kitchen up. You're apologizing because we made a brand promise to say that when we tell you something, we mean it, and we're gonna do everything we can to do it. So you're apologizing that things didn't work out the way we'd advertised. And there's a 5-step process to how to recover a relationship. The first one is to really listen to what they're upset about rather than running to solution. It's like, hey, they're not even that upset about the food. They had the options. They don't even want the food now, right? What they want is a clean getaway. What they want is an apology, that the recognition that something. And so it goes through this 5-step process. I taught it to hundreds and hundreds of people that work for me. And here's the really cool thing. Like the other 3, in operations, sales, and marketing, those are life skills, right? This is the next life skill. It's saying, I can't tell you how many parents called me or wrote letters to say, I don't know what you're doing down there at your restaurant, but like when my son comes home, it's like a different person. We're doing like gratitude circles before we start dinner at the table. He got in an argument with his sister, and he went through this process that didn't even seem like him. He listened to her. He apologized for the way that made him feel. He took action on what was going to happen. And at the end, he thanked her for the feedback. And she's like, I don't even know what's going on down there. So all of these things are great business tools, but they're great life tools as well.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Sean, I know our time is up now. I would love to have you back to have another conversation on let's call it the rest of the napkinomics around what you've built. Congratulations on this next phase and all the work you're doing to share it around the world. It's amazing what you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you, man. It's a pleasure to talk to you and to share some experience. So it's wonderful.